Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a regular meeting of the El Centro City Council. We're glad to see those of you who have come out tonight in exercise of democracy. We will begin with a roll call, please.
Mayor Sanders.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Solomon.
Here.
Councilmember Villegas Walker.
Here.
Councilmember Silva.
Present.
Councilmember Jackson.
Mr. Jackson informed me that he would be out at a LAFCO training, so he will not be present tonight. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Silva, and I will do the invocation.
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Those who can and will remain standing. If you feel more comfortable being seated, please do so. Our Heavenly Father, we come with our hearts humbled and our heads bowed. We bow in humble submission, recognizing that you are all power, and all power is in your hands. But Lord, we come seeking your divine guidance as we begin to deliberate the issues that are so important to the members of this community. We also come with hearts filled with thanksgiving for the blessings that you have bestowed upon us as Americans. Lord, we would be remiss if we did not ask for special blessing on those men and women on the battlefield in foreign lands, and we ask that you would touch with your hands of mercy those individuals who paid the ultimate price, and then surround their families with kindness and comfort. Lord, as we deliberate this, we ask the blessing on each person present, individually and collectively. These and all blessings we ask in thy Son's name. Amen. Amen. We will now have a report out of our closed session, which was held today at 11:30 by our City Attorney, Ms. Chris Becker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On a motion by Councilmember Villegas Walker, second by Councilmember Solomon, the City Council met in closed session at 11:31 a.m. pursuant to the closed session statement posted with the agenda. After Councilmember Silva arrived at 11:33 a.m., all council members were present except Councilmember Jackson. A report was given to Council on 5 anticipated litigation items. On 2 of the items, a report was given for information only with no action to report. On 3 of the items, there is no action to report, but direction was given to staff. With regard to the pending cases of Casillas versus City of El Centro, Imperial County Superior Court case number ECU 06694, City of El Centro versus Kazran Services Corporation, Imperial County Superior Court case number ECU 06590, and City of El Centro versus Geo's Mobile Home Estates, Imperial County Superior Court case number ECU 06900. There is no action to report, but direction was given to staff. There was an added item to closed session as the need to take action arose after the agenda had been posted. Moved by Councilmember Silva, seconded by Councilmember Villegas Walker, to add the pending case of Ojeda versus City of El Centro, United States District Court, Southern District of California, case number 12CV0051JMPCL to the closed session agenda. Motion carried 4-0 with Councilmember Jackson absent. There is no action to report on this item, but direction was given to staff. Closed session concluded at 1:11 p.m., and that concludes my report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. This is a public meeting, and any person wishing to address the City Council, the successor agency to the RDA, and housing agency is asked to complete a blue speaker slip. You will find them in the rear of the room, and submit this same to the City Clerk to the start of the meeting. When the item is announced and your name is called by the Mayor, please come forward to the microphone and address yourself to the City Council. Unless the Mayor extends the time limit, there will be a 3-minute time limit for each public presentation. If you wish to address the City Council on any subject matter within the City Council's jurisdiction that is not listed on the agenda, you may do so during the public comment portion of the agenda. Any information that you provide on your speaker slip will be considered a public record. I do have a presentation I would like to make before we get into our consent agenda, and that is a proclamation. Is BC Chief Burns available here? There you are. I'm going to read it from here. If you will come forward, and then those three of us will come down and congratulate you, and then we would ask that you would come up and certainly shake Mr. Solomon's hand. He wanted to do that as well. So I'm going to read it from the diocese. Whereas Battalion Chief Richard A. Burns has been a vital part of the City of El Centro and the El Centro Fire Department for over 27 years. And whereas Battalion Chief Richard A. Burns has provided the community vision for the future of the City of El Centro, compassion for the residents of El Centro, and an uncompromised devotion to duty. And whereas Battalion Chief Richard A. Burns has been a long, strong advocate for fire and injury prevention both for the public and firefighting staff, and the development of construction and staffing of the fire station number 3. And whereas the mayor and the city council wish to express their appreciation for his loyalty and commitment to our community, and to honor Richard A. Burns on this occasion of his retirement. Now therefore I, Sedalia Sanders, Mayor for the City of El Centro, State of California, does hereby recognize Battalion Chief Richard A. Burns and do hereby proclaim October 2nd, 2012 as Richard A. Burns Day in the City of El Centro. Congratulations. That was our, we have a member of the El Centro Chamber of Commerce to provide their monthly report. Seeing no one present, they'll probably come at our next meeting. Okay, this is our consent agenda. I'm ready to entertain a motion for consent. Consent agenda items are approved by one motion. Council members or members of the public may pull consent items to be considered separately at a time determined by the mayor. I'll entertain a motion for the consent items.
So move items 3 through 9.
Okay. It's been moved by Walker, second by Solomon. Ballot, please.
Motion carries 4 with 1 absent.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now to that point and time of the agenda that you've all been anxiously waiting. It is item number 10, continued Proposition 218 public hearing for July 17, 2012, to consider the proposed rate increase of the city water and wastewater services and acceptance of the water, wastewater, and stormwater rate study. Before Mr. Hagan comes forward with his presentation, I wish to acknowledge that we have received 840 valid protests in opposition, written protests, and we have received some additional protests tonight, but those protests that we've received tonight have not been checked for validity. So I want to acknowledge that we have 840 valid protests in opposition, plus I have several slips that you all wish to speak, and Mr. Hagan will give his presentation. Then I will establish a protocol for tonight's meeting as to how we're going to handle this public comments portion for all of you. Mr. Hagan, are you ready with your presentation?
Thank you, Mayor and council members. This will be a two-part presentation, one from Public Works and then another from Finance.
Okay.
Okay, our last meeting on this issue was July 17th, 2012. And what's happened since then? This is the next couple slides. Finance did a year-end closeout, and we updated the rate study. And this rate study's been re-gone through about 6-7 times. So each time we've tried different scenarios, moving projects around and funds and looking at how we can reduce it. So this is the lowest we've gotten so far. And what's occurred was on the water we went from 4.6 to 4.4, and the wastewater 6.2 to 5.8. And we also had a request to do the executive summary, and we redid that and posted it on the city website. We, for the July 17th, 12 council meeting, we had already done the Prop 218 mailers, but those were in English only, so we redid the mailers as a courtesy, both in English and Spanish. We had English on one side, Spanish on the other. There was a table that got on the English side that had an error on it, but it was correct on the other side. We put a notice in the newspaper right away that corrected that. We met with individual citizens and responded to their questions, several lengthy meetings. And out of these meetings, no errors were found in the rate study as a result of the meetings. One thing we did find, one citizen had requested the city clerk look for an old resolution that dealt with doubling rates for outside the city limits, and we did find this resolution back in 1980. And we also noticed that in 2001, when Haskell and Sunset was annexed into the city, that issue came up then, and they decided not to charge the double rates. Or actually, it wasn't during the annexation, it was the servicing, the connecting to those two streets. So they were still outside the city limits, but we did not double the rates. And our city attorney, we put in an LSR, and our city attorney will report on that right now.
Thank you, Mr. Higgin. First, it's important to note that there is no resolution regarding double sewer charges. So that was never addressed. It was simply the water. And while the resolution was never formally rescinded, as far as we can tell from searching our records, it was implicitly rescinded or superseded whenever the city would adopt a new water rate, and the double rate was not mentioned in the new water rate. So, and I don't know if you want me to go into the effect of Proposition 218 at this point, but we would not be able to, we cannot, because of Proposition 218, which came into play in 1996, we cannot just arbitrarily charge a double rate. Whatever increased rate we charge to customers that are outside of the city's jurisdiction, that would have to be justified by an engineer's report. And then we'd have to go through the Prop 218 process to raise those rates to the customers outside of the city limits.
Okay, so this was a resolution adopted 32 years ago.
Yes.
That somehow got lost in the passage of time as we move forward. It appears that at least for the last number of years, it's not been, we've not followed this policy or
Correct.
followed this resolution.
Correct.
All right, so then we would take steps to rescind it, would be your recommendation, or to officially rescind?
To formally rescind it, we can do that.
Okay.
But before we get there, Ms. Becker, is that a necessary step, or did you say, at least I thought I heard you say, because no action was taken as a result of that, with each subsequent rate adjustment, that was deemed rescinded?
It wasn't deemed rescinded, it was implicitly rescinded because it was superseded by the subsequent resolution that changed the rates and didn't mention the double rate.
Okay.
Chris, also without getting into the issue of the resolutions, you made a statement that the doubling of the sewer was not justified as well. Does that relate to Prop 218?
Yes, prior to the imposition of Prop 218 in 1996, you could have doubled the rates. You could have just imposed whatever rate you wanted to. But once Prop 218 came into play, the requirements set forth in Prop 218 mandates that any difference in the rate charged has to be supported by an engineer's report
For both water and sewer.
for both water and sewer.
Any additional questions for Ms. Becker?
Mr. Hagan, back in the day, what would have been the policy decision for having a doubling of rates outside the city limits? Just because it was more expensive to provide water out that way, or?
The justification is to encourage annexation.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, moving.
Any additional questions? Okay, Mr. Hagan, you may continue, please.
Okay, the next few slides are simply a review of what we presented last time. The historical rate changes we had, the last time we had a 5-year rate study and updated the rates was in 2005 or 2006, 2005. And it had been quite a while since we had a rate increase, and you can see where we had, in 1 year, we had a 25% increase in 2006, and then it went to 14%, and then 19%, and then 4%. These are the proposed rates, the updated rates of 4.4 for the next 5 years.
Mr. Hagan, could you go back a slide? Were any of those rates tied to the water increase rates in prior years, tied to increases that were passed down from the Imperial Irrigation District's increase of water rates to the city of El Centro? Weren't some of those pass-through rates? I mean, those weren't all tied to.
They were
No.
tied to the bonds and ability to pay the bonds back.
Okay. So I thought sometime within this timeframe we also had an increase from the IID and water rates that we had to pass
That as
through.
well, yes.
Right? But
That was
that's not
included.
reflected on these increases.
That was included in the increases,
Okay.
yes.
It is included. Okay.
Have a question, Mr. Silva?
Were you done with water, Terry? Is that your?
Yes.
Okay. Before we move on, then, without getting really technical, can you tell us and the public what's driving the necessity to reevaluate the water rates and the recommendation to increase those water rates over the next 5 years?
Since 2000, oops, let me back up here. Since 2009, we really haven't had an increase, but we've had an earthquake. We had $1.6 million damages in our laboratory tank and water plant. So that's mainly the water side of it. There's also some capital improvement projects we have to complete. There's 3 tanks on 8th Street at the water plant. 2 of those are very old. Those have to be refurbished. We're also looking at automating the meter reading. And then moving into wastewater, we had a sinkhole related to an a crack in a sewer line near the INS facility. That was I think it's 1.5 million approximately, 1.5 million. So we've used up a lot of the reserves, so we've got to replenish the reserves. And then we just have had, it's been since 2009, so that's 3 years since we've had an increase, and there's inflation. These numbers aren't real high. But the reserves in the wastewater were very low to begin with. And finance will cover some of these issues as well, the different funds.
And an observation that was made by a resident to us was the status of the FEMA funding, FEMA reimbursement. You want to touch?
Yes.
With that?
The FEMA funding may be several years out, maybe beyond this 5-year period for the rate study. So we probably won't see those funds for more than 5 years. Also, there's increased regulations that we have to handle and deal with as well from the state and the local water boards.
Mr. Hagan, let's expand that little issue as it relates to the FEMA funding, acknowledging the fact that the city must first advance the funds for these repairs, and then hopefully FEMA will come with the backfill of those dollars. But in order to do it, we must first advance the money, as we did over on La Boucherie with our water tank.
That is correct.
Okay. Any additional questions, Mr. Silva? Ms. Walker, any additional questions? Okay, Mr. Solomon, any questions at this time? Okay. All right, Mr. Hagan, if you have more to...
We have the wastewater, and back in 2006, we had 2 increases, a total of 15%. In 2007, another 15%, and then 4 and 4. These are the proposed rates, 5.8% for the next 5 years. How do our rates compare with other cities? We've got the proposed rate next year, 2013, with the water and the sewer bills added together, and we've compared this based on 14,000 gallons, which is a typical use for an average resident, and we've compared this with, we've got the El Centro existing, the proposed rate increase, then we've got Heber, Calexico, and the other cities, as well as some other cities outside our area. And you can see there's a few cities, Calexico currently is below us. There's quite a few cities that are in the $90 range, and then there's more higher ones here as well. So the average is $103.53, and we're well below the average.
Is there any additional...
Any questions?
Is that to complete your...
Finance will cover
Okay.
their presentation next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Salcido, please. Are those in the rear of the room, are you able to hear what's being said? No. Okay. Thank you. We'll make sure the persons speak more clearly into the microphone so that you can hear. Those of you, when you're not able to hear some of the statements, if you'll raise your hand, I will then be able to notice so the staff can recognize that they need to speak more clearly into the microphone.
Testing.
If you're not able to hear, just raise your hand if you don't hear it so that we could ask Ms. Salcido, excuse me, to speak just a tad closer to the microphone. Ms. Salcido, please.
Okay. So basically, that was the first part of the presentation. My presentation will cover or will go over the financial aspect of the rate study. We'll start with working capital. And what I did, I prepared a couple of slides to demonstrate what the working capital is for both water and wastewater as of June 30 of this year, the end of this last fiscal year. For water, the working capital is $6.9 million. And out of the $6.9 million, what I did is based on our financial policies, I try to determine what are the various designations that should be for out of the 6.9 for contingencies, for reserve, for accrued leave liabilities, for various liabilities and various potential expenditures that we might have in the future. So out of the $6.9 million, we designated a 10% reserve for contingencies. That's the minimum called for in our policy. That's the minimum called for in prudent business practices. $505,000 out of the $6.9 million for contingencies. We also allocated a designation for accrued leave liability of $200,000, a designation for vehicle and major equipment replacement of $3.8 million. Our total fleet value is 4.3, of which the accumulated depreciation is $3.8 million, and that's the amount recommended to be designated, set aside for potential expenditures in the future, and that's for vehicles and equipment. We also have other infrastructure, such as improvements and buildings. Within this other category, we have $67 million there and a depreciation of 29. We don't have sufficient to fully designate an amount for that, but we thought a $2.3 million in this category would help us in case there was some type of emergency situation. So overall, the $6.9 million for water working capital fund balance, we have designated 6.8, leaving us an undesignated, unreserved amount of $121,000.
Ms.
That's
Salcido,
as of 6:30, yes.
before you go on to your next slide, we have a number of people in the audience, obviously, and so I think the concept of a 10% reserve is, we all get that, right? Rainy day fund
Right.
set aside. And we all understand designation for vehicle and major equipment depreciation. So I think those categories, infrastructure replacement, we understand those. Can you touch a little bit on the designation for accrued leave liability? Because that might be a concept that we've all read about in the paper, but maybe this is an opportunity for you to see how the city is applying dollars towards that liability.
Basically what it is employees accrue a vacation, comp time, and what this is within the water fund, the water employees, this is the amount of accumulated vacation that it's a liability. This is an amount that would be due to the employees that they have accrued up through 6/30 of 12. So it's a liability. We need to start put aside monies aside to be able to pay that liability.
So it's a debt that we have.
Yes,
It's owed to the employees for
vacation,
employee benefits.
comp time, yes.
And it's our ability to set aside money to pay that debt to the employees as it accrues.
Yes.
Ms. Salcido, does this have anything to do with GASB? Is this a part of the GASB concept?
Not the, I think,
no.
GASB 45? No,
Yes.
it's not
Okay.
related to the GASB
All right.
45.
Is there more information you want to provide to us?
Yes. For the wastewater fund, this one is critical. The wastewater fund has a working capital as of June 30th, 2012 of $510,000. At $510,000 for this size operations, it's very insignificant. Well, we're able to reserve for contingencies the minimum of 10%, $437,000. We don't have sufficient capital, working capital, to establish a designation for any of the other potential liabilities. For example, for the accrued liability that we just described, we can only designate $73,000, which is a leftover amount after we designate this $437,000 at the top. There is no designation for a rainy day for vehicle replacement of vehicle and major equipment. This amount should be approximately $1.6 million. There is no designation for infrastructure replacement. The depreciation in this category is $31 million. There should be something set aside for any potential expenditures in that category. There is not sufficient within the wastewater working capital to designate a designation for that category. Overall, we only have $510,000. Very minimal, very small amount for this size of operations, wastewater fund.
So let it.
Yes.
The fact that we have zeros on those boxes really reflect that if we were to have another emergency
Exactly.
tonight,
Yes.
a major earthquake that damaged our water plant, we wouldn't have any funds to be able to deal with that emergency.
All we have is $510,000, and just as an example, in 2009 we had repairs to one sinkhole over by the INS. That was $1.4 million. So if that were to occur this year, we don't have that $1.4 million to cover that expenditure.
Any additional questions? You have more information, some additional slides? Okay, please.
This is another slide. Basically what I did is I determined, based on the study, what the estimated reserve would be in 5 years for both water and wastewater at the various rates. With a 4.4% rate increase in water, the estimated reserve in 5 years would be $7 million, will be $7 million according to the study. At 3.4, 5.7, and so on down, where if the rate increase approved is 1.4 for water, the estimated reserves in 5 years would be $3 million. For wastewater at the recommended 5.8%, the estimated reserves in 5 years will be $5.3 million, and at the lowest rate of 2.8, it would be 1.5. I went a step further and I developed a schedule because I wanted to know at the various rates, recommended rates, and various estimated reserves, how and if it would be sufficient to cover the various designations that I just talked about for the as of 6/30/12. So at a rate increase of 4.4%, the estimated reserve in 5 years is $7 million, which would be sufficient to cover the various designations for contingency, for the accrued leave liability, and equipment and infrastructure, leaving us with an ending undesignated working capital of $1 million. If we were to go with the lower rate of 3.4%, the estimated reserve, according to the study, would be $5.7 million, which would be short $295,000 and would not be sufficient to cover. One of these designations would have to be lower in order to zero this out. And so on as we go down to a lower rate. If we were to go with a 1.4, at 3.1 million in reserve as in 5 years, it would not be sufficient to cover the various designations required by prudent business practices and our own city policy by a negative $2.9 million. For the wastewater, at the 5.8 recommended rate, the reserve estimated at $5.3 million would be sufficient to cover the various designations and would leave an undesignated working capital of $892,000 at the end. If we go with the next rate of 4.8, we would be short by $418,000. No undesignated, we would have to lower one of these amounts, one of those designations. Some of the other things that were taken into consideration in developing this rate study is, in the increase in rates, is the coverage ratio. And what that is according to our bond covenants, there is a requirement for the city to have sufficient revenues to meet the debt service, sufficient revenues that equal or exceed 115% of the debt service. So any payments that we're going to make on debt, we better have revenues at least 115% of that. We have to submit certifications twice a year to assert to the fact that we do meet the 115%. Coverage requirements constitute a legal obligation, and any failure to meet that obligation can be considered a default, and the trustee can call the full debt and principal and interest to be paid immediately. So that's another thing in looking at our future rates and looking at our revenue streams. We need to make sure that we have enough on a year-to-year basis to be able to meet that 115% coverage ratio. For water and wastewater, our coverage ratio, again, with wastewater, that's the concern there. It's been at 115. It's been very weak, 116 in 2012. You're going to see that in 2013, it goes up to 125. However, that's a one-time event. We refinance our bonds and this year, and there is no principal payment this year, and therefore our coverage ratio is higher. However, estimating the same level of revenues, without a rate increase for the next 2 years, and some of the expenditures going up due to inflation factors and increase in cost allocation because we don't have the redevelopment agency anymore, the coverage ratio goes down to 1.10, 1.11 estimated. That's wastewater. For water, we had a couple...
Betty, can I
Yes.
stop you there?
Yes, sir.
Can you be more specific as it relates to the impact of the RDAs being eliminated?
General services, you mean the impact to these?
Right.
Okay. General services such as city clerks, city councils, city managers, finance, all those general services operations, the cost is being allocated to general fund, water, wastewater, RDA. By the state eliminating the RDA, now those costs are being allocated to 3 entities, the wastewater, the water, and the general fund. Therefore, the expenditures are going to be higher for those funds. For the next few slides, it's 3 more slides. And what it is I wanted to show council what the cumulative increase would be over the 5 years on a customer with an average bill, with an average consumption of 13,000 gallons a month. And the increase, I kept water constant at 4.4%, and wastewater, I varied. I think the first slide is 5.8, the next one is 4.8, and so on. So this customer this year would be paying $106 at current rates. Over the next 5 years, his bill would increase by 4.36. The first year, 481, 497, 528, whereas in 2017, this customer would be paying 131.89 for an increase of 25.01, both water and wastewater. That's at the wastewater increase of 5.8%. With a 4.8% increase in wastewater, this customer with a 13,000 gallon consumption a month is paying, who's currently paying $106.88. In fiscal year 17, in 5 years, she would be paying $129.17 for an increase of 22.29. And again, 3.8 in wastewater increase. The increase over 5 years would be 1966. So basically, it's a difference between the 25.01 at the highest rate increase. The next one would be 22.29, which is $2.72 less, or 1966, which is a difference of 5.35 between those 3 rates.
Mr. Solomon has a question for you,
Yes.
Ms. Salcido.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
We have already seen these slides before the council. And
All right. If you'll bear with us, Mr. Solomon will try to get the microphone a little closer so he can restate his question, and Ms. Salcido will try to answer. Thank you for waving your hand.
we have, as a council, seen this presentation. Has the numbers changed from the time that we saw them until now?
Since the last presentation,
Yes, ma'am.
yes. Have the numbers changed? I believe, I think Mr. Hagan mentioned that some of the numbers were updated because we're closing the year, we're working through our year-end process, and so some of the numbers changed. As a result of that, I believe water is now, the rate being presented to you is 4.4, and then wastewater is 5.8, and that's a decline from the previous numbers.
Okay.
Were you able to hear that in the rear of the room? Okay, thank you.
Okay. On Adams, there are some people that have approached me and mentioned that we should take the money off of Adams and spend it on these different projects so that we don't have to increase the amount of money that we're getting from the residents.
You mean the Adams Avenue project, such
Right.
as, okay. He's talking the MLK pavilion and the skate park and the aquatic center, perhaps the money should be shifted from those projects over. But I don't know that, well, Ms. Salcido will respond.
Well, the reason why I asked the question, I believe that money is designated and can only be used for those particular projects. So I thought we need to clear it out and get that out of the way so everyone would know right off the bat.
Okay, yes, absolutely. We're talking about two different funds. The Aquatic Center, the Martin Luther King project, is in the general fund dollars. We've also issued bonds for that specific purpose, and those monies can only be used for that project. The wastewater, the water funds should be self-sustained funds. And what that means, it's pretty much the money that comes in has to be sufficient to support its operations. And basically, the monies that have been allocated to those projects that you mentioned are either bond proceeds or general fund monies, and they cannot be used for enterprise activities,
Yeah, well,
especially the ones related to the bonds.
good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any additional questions for Ms. Salcido?
No, I was going to ask the same question Mr. Solomon, point Mr. Solomon raised, is that in fact we don't have an ability to shift water and sewer fund for other purposes that are not related to these activities.
Right.
Ms. Salcido, do you have another slide for us?
That's all my slides.
Okay, that's all the slides. Ladies and gentlemen, I do have several slips. I will try to establish a protocol for us to be governed by tonight to ensure that as many that wish to speak will have the opportunity. If someone comes up and speak and that person actually says everything that you would like to say, I will call your name, and if you concur with those statements previously made, I would just ask that you would raise your hand and say you concur. If you feel that you have the burning desire to come forward and make a comment, please don't hesitate to come forward when your name is called. I have a list of slips here.
My burning desire.
Your burning desire, all right. And these will be, I'm just selecting them as they came in. First one is Rita Noden. Ms. Noden? The time limit is...
Mayor and council members.
The time limit is 3 minutes, Ms. Noden.
It's been a while.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to say that I'm opposed. I sent my letter of opposition in and delivered it to the city clerk's office a while back, after I got back into town. I don't think the increase should be any more, and I think it should be set at something where the CPI is involved, at least for now. I think your economy just in this area is just really depressed, and I think it would be hard on a lot of people. My second concern is the way the public hearings were held. I have spent my summer in Colorado. I did not get a single notice about either public hearing, and I have all my mail forwarded to me. My first comment when I heard was it was pre-sorted. And when you pre-sort mail, if it's sent out pre-sorted, it's like junk mail that the post office refers to. They will return it either, I think on the cities, they return some of them to the city. I think the bank does not forward notices, bank statements and all. Those go back to the bank. So they need another address for you in those regards. But because I did not receive a notice of either public hearing, I feel that it's done a disservice to not just myself, but to a lot of public. Yes, I heard about it. I heard about it online. I was chatting with my neighbor online one evening and asked if I had heard about the public hearing, and I told him no. And I then proceeded to call the city to find out what was going on, and was told that that had been continued to this time. But I did not even receive this public hearing notice because my mail was still being forwarded to Colorado. And because it was pre-sorted, you spent the money it didn't get to me. How many other people were in that same boat? So I think you've got a problem there in noticing the general public and how you do your noticing.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Snowden.
you.
Thank you. The next individual is Richard Ferraro. Richard, are you? Oh, to come forward, all right. Thank you very much. Richard Ferraro, Cheryl Von Flew, if you'll come toward the front. Ruben Valenzuela, if you'll come toward the front, then we'll be calling you in that order. Okay. Sure.
Madam Mayor.
3 minutes is your time limit, Mr.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Council, City Council. I had a lot of things to say tonight, but after seeing that report, it just seems to me, I hate to be doom and gloom, but what's going to happen after 5 years? We got $1 million, $1 billion, whatever plant going on out there, and the economy here cannot support it. I don't know where we're going to get this money in 5 years again, because they'll be asking again for it. And I can understand increases, but this isn't real, totally unreal. And I had all kinds of facts and figures. I read the report. I knew that thing up and down. I'm not going to talk about it. I hope you guys do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Valenzuela, or was it, oh no, Ms. Von Flew, thank you. And then Mr. Valenzuela.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council people. I would like to put a face behind some of who your community members are here. I've lived in El Centro for 24 years. I own a home here. And I know for a fact, even though I've lived out of town and worked out of town in Sacramento, Salinas areas in the last 15, 20 years, that this is my home, and I do represent the face of the unemployed now and then. And I've come to the city hall here, and I've seen people lined up that can't even pay their bill with the rates that we have. And I just want to point out that in some ways, when I look at the figures that are up there, in 1906, that there was a 25% raise, shame on us for not coming up here and paying attention to it back then. Because I do think that even though we're looking at a 25% raise in the next 5 years overall, that's unconscionable based on the fact that we have a lot of unemployment. We're the highest rate of poverty in Imperial County. Imperial County is the highest rate of unemployment, poverty, welfare assistance, and that is in the state of California and even the nation. I think that you guys need to go back to the drawing board, do some brainstorming, look at other ways that you can help meet the needs of what's going on with the operations, but to not raise the water rates, I am opposed to that. I would also like to make a couple of comments, and that's that I do believe that there's undereducation in Imperial County about wasting water, and I think that we need to be very conscientious about helping people to better preserve and utilize our water properly so that we don't have so much strain on our system that is here. I would like to suggest that you go back to the drawing board. I'm, number one, opposed to a 5-year plan of a continual increase. I think if maybe you took 2 years and addressed it in small increments, let's see what happens in 2 years. And during this time, see if we can't get a better footing for having our budget balanced in order to provide the water services that need to be provided. But I'm definitely opposed to the 5-year and the 25% increase as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have Mr. Valenzuela. Following Mr. Valenzuela will be Hank Kuiper and Juanita Crosby. They'll come forward. Just be prepared to, Mr. Valenzuela.
My name is Ruben Valenzuela, and I am the pastor of Our Lady of Guadalupe Church, located at 153 East Brighton Avenue. I live at 169 Quail Run Drive. Most of the people that I serve, which is 1,500 families, reside in El Centro on the east side, and they're low income, and they are also in the targeted areas of the city of El Centro. Approximately 50% of the people that I serve are mostly low income, they're marginal or poor, or the poorest of the poor. My concern is that the increase of the water and sewer rates proposed by the city on some of our parishioners will incur a financial obstacle due to their current income level. Most of these people either don't speak English or have a hard time communicating, and most of them don't know about the utility rate increase. I am here as a voice of these people because I know that it will definitely affect their way of life. I would like the city to reconsider and to make some adjustments in regards to the proposed increase, or if possible, exempt, if possible, those on fixed income or below the poverty level, or maybe even given 1 year to initiate the proposed utility rate. I was talking to my housekeeper today. She's on fixed income, she's on Social Security, she works on 2 part-time jobs, and she said she would rather let her grass grow dry than pay these rates. She could not afford to pay these rates. For those homeowners who can prove their income tax through their income tax statement that they cannot at this time pay for the new rate, be given an extended time to pay for the total of a new rate. For example, instead of paying the new rate for the next 5 years, and I don't know, unless my math is wrong, I got the different information than that. If a person is paying $100 right now, and this is compounded over 5 years, they would be paying $160 by the end of 5 years. Am I correct or not correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's what you gave. See, now that 5.8 means like they think that's for the 5 years, and it's not like that. And this is kind of like misconception. Now, it's not right. It should be a lot clearer than that. See how it is? Now, what I'm saying is, myself, I can't afford to pay. And there are several people that can afford to pay, but the people that I serve are people that are the lowest of the lowest income. East Side, and you know the East Side, has always been the open door to the immigrant. The people that come to the city wind up in the East Side of El Centro because that's the only place they can afford a home. And you know these people are in the low income bracket. So my heart goes out to them. In other words, for example, instead of paying the new rate tax for the next 5 years, I would suggest that the city be given 10 years. Give it 10 years and lower the rate. Lower the rate. That way, the city will collect the proposed new tax and the new tax hike, and those who cannot afford the full amount in 5 years may be able to pay the rate at a lesser amount over a 10-year period. The homeowner may pay their fair share, will pay their fair share of the city, and the city will receive the amount suggested by the utility rate. There's no loss. I believe that this would be a win-win situation. Both the city will benefit by receiving the rate that they would suggest, and the homeowner would not pay at such a steep rate eventually, but eventually would pay for it, but not at a steep rate as it is considered right now. Thank you, and may pray that you make a just decision.
Thank you so much, Mr. Valenzuela. We have Mr. Kuiper. Following Mr. Kuiper will be Juanita Crosby and Robert Ramirez. Mr. Kuiper.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and honorable council members. And you're right, your microphones really need to be turned up.
Okay.
Or either that or eat the mic. I could spend 3 minutes, I guess, saying hello, but I won't. As you're all aware, I've seen lots of these budgets sitting in various chairs in Imperial County. And I understand the need for increases in service and increase in capital or improvements or expansion. I understand that totally. Haven't been in the arena for a long time. The only thing I would question a few things. By the way, good luck on getting that $1.6 million from FEMA. If we were called Solyndra City of El Centro or GM El Centro, we'd probably get it. But I think it's going to be a while before you get that $1.6 million. Most of your costs that you're looking forward to, I'm sure, is information that's gathered because of plans that you've approved for different housing developments already, and you have to plan for those in the future. And I would say that the current economy, those things aren't going to happen. They won't happen within 5 years, and if they happen at all. I know there's been a lot of expansion of projects along La Boucherie and along Ross Road, and I know the players there very well, but I think with the economy going, you're not going to see that very soon. By the way, I understand your hookup fees for just sewer and water in El Centro for one permit for one house is $25,000 now, just for sewer and water. That doesn't include the other permit fees. So it's pretty expensive just to start a house, let alone buy the lot. Just a couple things on capital improvements. The Dannenberg-Alder water line, I would wonder, is that an expansion or a capital improvement? That's just be the question that probably should be answered sometime. And the meter replacements, those AMR, the automatic meter readers, $2.7 million. Maybe that's a luxury we can't afford right now. Maybe that's something that should be placed on the back burner for a while, maybe for the next 5-year project. if it goes that long, because that's something that perhaps we don't need at this time. And I see another big number here, and that's the East Main Sewer Pipeline. That's $11 million. Now, I understand that probably needs some improvement and expansion both. But I'm just wondering about the necessity of spending $11 million on that right now when we're in the economy that we're in. So, and I wonder once in a while about the $1 million for emergency repairs. Yeah, the staff is probably right. It could be a lot more. We could have one of them great big earthquakes that happened on Easter Sunday. I was just getting ready to do dinner prayer. On Easter Sunday, my kids don't want me to do the prayer because they think an earthquake's coming. My prayers aren't that powerful, Sedelia. But that's just comments from me, and I'm one of the few people in town. I've been living next to Dick Waddell for 40 years and 2 months. Right, Dick? And he's a good neighbor, and he keeps his grass green, and there's a lot of us in town that do. But if you go around town and look, there's a lot of brown yards. People are not watering their yards because they can't afford it now. The economy's bad. So I would just ask, maybe you and staff needs to go through the numbers and through the things that you're doing and maybe give some relief to us citizens. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kuiper. Juanita Crosby. Following Juanita Crosby would be Robert Ramirez and then Richard Waddell. Ramirez, thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm
Ms.
going to,
Crosby,
it's
yes.
kind of short. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for giving us some time to talk here.
All right, those in the rear of the room, Ms. Crosby, said they have difficulty hearing your statements.
Okay, I'll raise my voice.
Just scoot up a little closer to the mic. There you are.
Okay. First of all, thank you for giving us a voice today. I really appreciate it. I want to thank all the volunteers who helped collect signatures. One of our challenges was that it was very difficult to walk in this extreme heat. A lot of the volunteers had a difficult time. It was a challenge to be out there in extreme weather. Anyway, I just want to thank everybody. And what I wanted to say is, when I was out there walking the neighborhoods and trying to collect signatures, it was very hot, 114, and I went to some neighborhoods where the residents, it broke my heart. They did not have their lights on. Some of them did not have their air conditioners on, and I was surprised about that. They were very anxious to sign the petition to oppose the water rate, and it was just difficult. Not only that, I had to carry a flashlight to see where I was going because it was dark in some neighborhoods. The other thing I wanted to say is that in the Imperial Valley Press on Sunday, September 30, I saw part of a segment of the article says that the city plans to install automatic meter reading systems worth $2.7 million. That actually concerned me because right now, currently, City of Imperial residents have one of the highest water rates in the county. I have some coworkers that have shared with me that they pay $300 a month, and that's just for two ladies living in a house. They do not water their lawn. And that city has automatic water reading systems, and they are on a 3-tier system. I'll try to make it short. What I have here is an article of the City of Atlanta. It kind of says that 5 years ago, the City of Atlanta began installing automated water meters that would enable meter readers to collect data by driving past the property. But the issues surrounding billing appear to have arisen with the introduction of the new meters. The city has some of the highest water rates in the United States after prices were hiked by 12% in July to cover the cost of a huge sewer project. One other item there says that an internal audit was conducted, revealing that delays in meter reading would force some customers into higher rate tiers. And same thing another article, same
Would you
problem.
like to just leave your articles with us, Ms.?
I'll just finish real quick because
Okay,
I
thank
think
you.
this is one of the issues that may arise with the installation of water meters. We have enough problems trying not to pay higher rates, and what they indicate is that in 2007, city auditors found they were unable to verify electronic meter readings because of meter read errors, equipment failures, or human error. The audit said about 9% of the meters could not be read due to broken or malfunctioning equipment. That's it. I'm cutting it short. But this is one of the concerns that I have with the installation of water meters. There seems to be some issues with that equipment, and it does raises some concerns. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert Ramirez. Following Mr. Ramirez will be Dick Waddell,
Okay.
and then Alice Augusta.
All right. My name is Robert Ramirez. I'm just a consumer. Like the other people said, we're about 30% unemployment rate. Like I said, the grass is going dead. You know, we already live in an ugly city. The city's ugly. The city doesn't do anything for us. There's no palm trees. The Buckland Park is terrible. You know, and we're gonna raise rates. We're gonna raise rates. And like this gentleman, he showed us a chart. He said, we really haven't had an increase. And in the note it says, there has not been an increase since 2009. Well, his charts contradict themselves because one showed $3.30 and the other one was $3.17. So it contradicted itself.
Well, I think Mr. Hagan announced earlier on that there was some mistakes, and we were very happy to have Mr. Larson point out some of those errors to us, and he spoke with staff and several of us as council members. He noted that, and so, yes, so those mistakes were there, and those
And
were
also with
corrected, and they were put out online as well as the web page, and then sent to the paper as well.
Okay. And with the average homeowner paying, I pay 170, sometimes 190. And just to break it down to an average person paying maybe 140. And what's the population of El Centro?
Well, about 45,000.
45,000.
That's an approximate number.
That's an approximate number.
Mm-hmm.
So who's keeping track of the funds that go into the water bill, and where are those funds going? I know they said we could all get lost in their numbers. We're just average citizens paying our bill. We know what we pay. We know what we could afford. And if you increase it, like I said, I could afford it. The father here, he could afford it. Some people could afford it. But all these other people can't. And the IED is going to raise their bills. Everybody's raising their bills. But our payment, our income is not increasing. Nobody's income is increasing. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, sir. Mr. Waddell, and then Alice Augusta, and Antonio Sanchez.
Good evening. First, I'd like to say I've lived in the city a long time. I grew up here and raised family here, spent most of my career here. And I've always been proud of the way the city runs their business.
Mr. Waddell, there's individuals in the rear of the room. They're raising their hands saying they have difficulty hearing you.
Okay, well, that was kind of off the record anyway.
Oh, okay. All right. Mr. Waddell said he's lived in the city all of his life. He's a native, and he's had a career here. Now he will continue with the next sentence.
And I'm proud of this city.
And he's a proud...
And I think you got excellent staff working to do the best they can for the city. I wrote a letter to Ruben about a week or so ago, and I also gave a copy to the city clerk, and hopefully that was in your docket, maybe. I do not know. Is it?
Yes, I received your letter,
okay.
yes.
So I met Mr. Ruben was nice enough to arrange a meeting with Mr. Hagan and Mr. Hines and others to answer my questions. And I was hoping that maybe Terry would address those questions, but let me quickly go over them. It's going to take more than 3 minutes.
Could you do it in 5, Mr. Waddell?
5? Well, I wonder if there are people in the
Well, I tell you
audience
what.
that would yield their 3 minutes to me.
Well, you know
If they
what?
could just raise their hands.
I have quite a list yet to go through.
Okay.
I haven't seen anyone come forward when I've called their name. No one have said they didn't want to come forward. So
Okay.
I want you to make this concise, and I know you're capable of doing that.
Okay, first of all, I understand, even though the Hank lives next door to me, and for a long time, he addressed some of the items I addressed in my letter, and I've never talked to Hank about this issue until tonight. I saw him here, and I want to reassure Terry Hagan that I hadn't talked to him about it.
Okay.
So, first of all, there is no statutory requirements for the minimum in the reserve. There's not a statutory requirement. The only restraints put on the reserve seem to be maybe the bond company requirements. And I understand that the bond controls a lot of this. And the earthquake repairs, I understand the need to replenish the reserve. I think that's proper, and the money that goes towards that's proper. So, and I understand in the answer to question number 4 in my letter that if you take $1 million out of the rate, out of the budget, for instance, the water, you would reduce the rate by 1%. Say $1.7 million or $1.5 million. Example is, if you took that those nice water meter replacements out, you would reduce that rate by 1%, the increase. You would reduce that. So I do think that is something you should consider if you're going to show us that you are thinking about us when you set the rate. And the $1 million pipeline that goes from Ross to Dannenberg, I questioned that, but Mr. Hagan and staff explained the reason for it, which I understand totally. And he also indicated, I believe, that was going to be paid for out of developer fees, the capacity fees or the general improvement fees. If that's correct. That's correct. And as long as you got those fees, why not? I mean, that's what they're for.
Yes.
So I agree on those issues. The multi-million-dollar pump station in the sewage treatment wastewater plan, that's a real tough one. And we discussed it this morning, and staff indicated that they have re-estimated that project, and as I understand, he says, Randy expressed that now the estimate is $6.5 million. That's $5 million taken off the price of that one item. But then I came to the meeting tonight, and I was talking to some of your staff, and they say that reduction of $5 million in the wastewater program is not going to affect the rate at all. Even though when I left the meeting this morning with staff, I had the clear understanding that if we reduced the price or the budget in either enterprise by $1 million, it would reduce it by about 0.5%. But now I understand tonight that is not possible in the sewer rates. So I think we need an explanation of why we can't affect a similar reduction at the rate of 0.5% per million if we've reduced the price of that very expensive pump station. And now I understand the need for that pump station, and that's explained to me, and it is needed. It's going to solve a lot of problems south of the freeway. But a lot of these things they're needed, but there's no growth going on now. There hasn't been growth for 5 years, and it looks like there's not going to be growth for another 5 years. So we don't have to spend some of that money. on the expansion of the system to take future unless it's already committed. Apparently, the bond money is already committed. That has to be spent in the wastewater enterprise. So, anyway.
Are you bringing your comments to closure, Mr. Wydell?
Say again?
Are you bringing your comments to closure?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I have several slips here that are coming in. I wondered if those of you who have sent a slip up, do you still wish to speak, or did some of the previous speakers address your concerns? Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Ramos, did they address your concerns? Antonio Ramos, has your concerns been addressed? No, it's not your turn. No. Okay, well, I'm not calling you. I just want to see if you still want to come up. Holly Barcalo, has your concerns been addressed? Okay. Juan Zarate, your concerns been addressed?
No.
Is it Lucy Castro? Is it Lucy? Or Lacey Castro? Castro? Has your concerns been addressed, Ms. Castro?
No.
Okay. Guadalupe Vasquez, has your concerns been addressed by the previous speakers? Yes. Yes? Okay, thank you. Patricia Rivas, has your concerns been addressed by previous speakers? Thank you. Naomi Castillo, your concerns been addressed by any of the previous speakers? Naomi Castillo still in the room? Okay. Ofelia Vasquez, has your concerns been addressed by previous speakers? Yes. Is that a yes? Okay. Arthur, is it Naya? Has your concerns been addressed, Mr. Naya?
They have not.
All right. Then we're ready now for Alice Augusta. Alice Augusta? Alice, are you in the room? Okay, I don't see Alice. Antonio Sanchez. I don't see Antonio. Isabel Solario? Isabel? Arthur Naya?
Yes.
Would you come forward? Are you ready to speak to us, or have your concerns been addressed?
My concerns have not been addressed.
You may come to the microphone, sir. Following him would be Naomi Castillo and Ms. Castro. Okay, sir.
Well, can you hear me? Is there?
Sure. Well, we can hear you.
Okay.
But,
what about them? Can they hear me now?
We can hear you, but
Okay.
Those in the rear of the room, are you able to hear? Okay. Proceed, sir.
Okay. I do not agree with you guys raising the rates. I don't understand why should you. I mean, it seems like it's for your benefit and, in your politics power, or is it for the benefit of the people here? I mean, no one's really making it. They're barely struggling making it, and you want to raise the rates on people that are working? I mean, take a look at me. I'm a trucker. I came down from Arizona. My mom's sick. I'm here for her. Okay, it upsets me how you guys just say, well, let's just raise the rates for our benefits. That's how I'm taking it. Okay, it's upsetting me because you just want to do that because you can, and that is wrong. And all of a sudden, why do you want to raise the rates at this time? Why at this time? Okay. Another thing is, another person mentioned here about the electronic water meters, etc. Yes, they have a problem. They have problems in Arizona, in Yuma, in Phoenix, and you want to bring that problem over here to the city of Central? Okay. So please don't say that, you know, this is a good thing, or we should do this because, you know, you can, or, yeah, it looks good. No, it's not. No, Lake Triana water meters don't look good. No rates look good right now at this point. Because it's very upsetting me because how you guys just sit there and you assume it's good. Like another person said here, El Centro's ugly. The Buckland Park, when I was growing up, you know, over there right by Buckland Park, it was nice, green, and everything. And then now all of a sudden you have cement. You can't really ride your bikes on that because it's hard. I mean, it's very bad planning. And the way I look at it now, if you're planning to raise the rates, it's going to get worse. It seems like you guys don't know how to budget correctly or how to, you know, understand and where people are coming from and how they feel about, you know, where they stand at in life. You know, by raising rates, you know, like I said, that's not a good thing. And it's upsetting me because you guys, you know, it just seems like you don't care. And let me ask all of you there, sitting here, looking at me, is it for the benefit of these people here and my mother? Like I said, she's sick, she can't make it. Or is it for your benefit? Or is it benefit for who?
Sir, it's we are residents of El Centro, just as the members of this audience. So anything that occurs or is implemented, the city council will also be affected by it. So your
not as much as them. Honestly, not as much as all these people here that can't make it here either, and the people that are working right now that can't make it at all. I mean,
and the fact that you're here registering your concerns is very much appreciated. And that's why we're giving all of you an opportunity to say what you have to say and to let us know the conditions and the concerns that you have, especially for your mom. We appreciate that.
Another thing is, last month they went to go check the water meter or something at my mom's house, whatever, and the water meter guy had a bad attitude. He just turned off the water. I paid my mom's bill. It was, you know, maybe 10, 12 days late, whatever disconnection, etc., whatever. But I told him I already paid it, and he just kept it. He just shut off and walked away. And it upsets me is that my mom's paying for that kind of attitude, that service, and it seems like you guys just, if you ever hear from a problem like that, you just kind of just let it go by because, oh, well, it doesn't affect me. I mean, like I said, that's what I'm getting from you guys. It's like, well, whatever. I'm sure you guys can afford a new car right now. But all these people here and other people that can't make it, I don't think they can go afford a brand new car right now. Especially right now, the way the economy is. I'm sure everybody knows how it's going around this country.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I'll call forward the next three. Naomi Castro, are you in the room? I said Naomi Castillo. Is she in the room? Okay. Now, Lucy Castro. Do you want to come forward?
He said everything I would have.
Okay, thank you. Juan Zarate. Do you want to come? Okay. Following that will be Holly Barcalo and Antonio Ramos. Mr. Zarate.
Honorable Mayor Sanders and distinguished councilmen, my name is Juan Zarate. I'm here like a lot of other people here whose relatives live in Central, and they asked their relatives to come and speak before you. I have some concerns, perhaps show some, have some light into this picture. There was no discussion on the number of connections that the city has, so that you perhaps will have an idea what is the revenue that is being generated by the water and sewer operations. That would be helpful in you deciding what is the gross income per month times the amount of money that's coming in, as well as the expenditures. There was a lot of emphasis placed on reserved, and I agree with the gentleman's comment. There's nothing statutory that's mandated on the reserves. Seemed like every account, I think I had counted 4 and I lost track of how many accounts there were on reserve. there's no mention in the state constitution that was amended by Proposition 218 that dictate that these reserves must be in place. The other question I would like to ask the public works person who is in charge of the sewer plant, what is the plant's capacity, number one? What is the wastewater flow per day? Is it up to maximum? I don't know. There's a lot of expenses that have been incurred to increase the capacity of the wastewater flow. That hasn't been demonstrated to me in their presentation today. So you need to find out what is the plant capacity, what is the daily flow, what is the percentage that you have to play with. The presentation here today was that you're at max, that you need to spend this amount of money, that amount of money, but there's no background for you to base your decision on the rate increases. There was also Father Rubin who made an excellent presentation about the expenditures. The community is hurting. Out of the 174,000 people that live in the county, 83,000 people receive social services in this county. 83,000, and that's pretty close to 50%. And there are other health issues, as you know, the unemployment. People don't have the money. There was other presenters here that commented on the emergency repairs, the sewer line, and the reserves, and the $1 million pipe cost, the sewer expenditures, the meter expenditures. I don't think that you can afford to make all the expenditures in light of what the economy is in this county. And with that, I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, sir. I believe staff is taking notes, so some of these questions that's being raised by members of the audience can be answered following all of those who wish to speak. Ms. Barcalo. Following Ms. Barcalo will be Antonio Ramos.
If I call you Trustee Sanders by mistake, I'll apologize in advance. I have some questions. One question is foreclosures. How much of this water rate increase is based on the fact that there's less water being used now than in prior years, so therefore you need more money because your rate of revenues did not meet expected income? Question number two, also on foreclosures, came discussion in the back row that how much is being given to water for people who cannot pay, they're in foreclosure, maybe they're not out of the house yet, so therefore they have water. Are they getting to pay their bills? Is their water being turned off? I can answer some of that because I actually have students who have no water at their house right now because they can't afford to pay the bill. I have kids coming to school, hair unwashed, unbathed, because they don't have water at their house. They can't afford it. And I know that's not your fault, but it's how I feel with my students. When I have kids who can't come and learn.
We appreciate your compassion. But we don't know, Ms. Barcalo, with that statement that you're making, whether or not these are property owners or renters.
They're renters. They can't afford to own.
Well, then I'm surprised that the health department haven't intervened, because I was of the view that the health department would not allow water to be turned off if, in fact, children are in the home.
Well, we've turned them over to Child Protective Services, so we hope that they will get water soon.
All right. That's a separate issue.
Consumption of water. How much is it down this year for your budget over prior years? I see many houses now with brown lawns because they cannot afford to water their lawn. My lawn's probably going to turn that way next summer too. My water bill all summer is based on what waters my lawn. I'm not here. I leave the valley like Mrs. Noden does for the summer. Your sewer rate is based on your water. I wouldn't mind paying water rate, but paying for sewer when not one tiny little drop is going down my sewer very much irritates me. And the gentleman who commented about his average bill of $170, that is much more realistic than what we were seeing in the charts. And the compounding of the interest, if we have a 4.4% rate, I teach math, 4.4%, and that raises the amount, and the next year gets another 4.4, that's not a 4.4 on $100 anymore. It's 4.4 on $104.4, and it just compounds and gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So you're really not looking at 4.4 rate increase each year. You're based on this year's amount, you're basing it, and it's getting bigger every year. Last thing, how much use is used per average for the household here in El Centro? Let's just say, pick a house on the east side of El Centro, a house in the central part of El Centro, and a house on the west side of El Centro, one on north, one on south. And look at those houses and see how many gallons is being used for a family of, you don't even know how many live in the house, because there's many houses that may say they only have 4 people living there, and because of people losing their homes, they've got more people living in a house. But look and see what it actually is, the cost to a family for them to afford to have water to bathe, to cook with, to wash the clothes, to live. Because that's what these people are trying to do. They're trying to live. With our high unemployment rate, they're barely making it. And putting in meters that you can read, that you don't have to pay anybody to go out and read, that's taking away jobs. And we need jobs in this community. Having an electronic, zap it with some sort of a gun to read the meter is taking away several jobs, I'm going to guess, in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barcalay. I'm down to the last. I'm sorry. I thought it was the last one. I have Mr. Ramos, and then Pablo. Is it Mars? Pablo? Okay. Tony Ramos.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Antonio Ramos. I live here in El Centro. Of course, I'm a resident. When this county was formed over 100 years ago, they developed Hoover Dam in order to be the pipeline for the survival of the upper and lower basin states in the West Coast. And Imperial County was allocated over a third of that water. So we have more water than we need, and that's why we shouldn't be selling water to the coastal communities, because they're hurting us. And by that token, Mrs. Mayor and board members and audience, our water should be, I shouldn't say cheap, but it shouldn't be expensive. I understand that the water you buy from the IED, you sell it to us at a higher rate than that you buy it, of course, because of the sewage and what you have to do to maintain that. But even with that, you could make money and maintain it, not a profit, because people in government like you, councilman, and the people are not there to make money off of the people. They're there to kind of equal everything and let people go on. With a 33% unemployment rate, and I have 2 sisters right now, and I'm not trying to cry anybody's shoulder. One is unemployed, the other one is underemployed. And I've told them, they have to live with me, go ahead, leave your little apartments and come with me. And that's how bad it is right now. I had never in my life had to look at my sisters or family members or friends be subjected to unemployment. Right now, I also have, Mrs. Mayor, people in the state, in the parole department, they're going to be out without a job. And these are high-paid people because they're doing away with parole. Why I'm saying this is that it's going to affect even your worker, your farm worker, to the person that used to work at a state prison or even in an office. To me, a rate increase is no different than a tax increase. If they tell me, well, you know what, we're going to give you a rate increase. Oh, good, it's a rate increase. But if you told me you're going to give me a tax increase, I say, heck with it, But it's no different. It's still coming out of my pocket, either my right pocket or my left pocket. Right now, I don't have that much money in my pockets anyway, so it's not going to matter. So to me, the people have spoken. They've told you. I haven't heard anybody say, yeah, we're for it. Hey, come on, let's go for it. Increase our rates and let's see what better way you can serve us. I haven't heard one person talk to you people
to this committee, to this board, to the city council and say, we're for it. And you know, one of the hardest jobs, I'm very politically involved, as you know, Mrs. Mayor. I go to board meetings at the Board of Supervisors. At the ID, they don't like me because I tell them what they don't want to hear. But that's what's good about the Brown Act. The Brown Act is covered by this, that you can speak your open mind whether you like it or not. And this is America, which is good. And I'm not trying to stray away from the subject, but this is good. This is government at its best.
Absolutely.
And,
we
its best.
concur.
And you, Mrs. Mayor, should be saluted too, because you keep your phone number in the phone book. You don't hide from the people. When I call you...
Mr. Ramos, but you were going to talk about water
Yes,
tonight.
but what I'm trying to say, when I call you, you've been accessible.
Okay, but
And my point is this, is that you've heard the people. They said no. When you ran for office, you said that you would hear your constituents. And you heard us. A water increase right now would be the worst thing to do. And to me, it's a matter of not just going back and trying to review this. It's a matter of not doing it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please come forward. This will be our last speaker. Then, yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Pablo Mares, and I would like to discuss this a little bit about this. I'm kind of opposed to the water race that you guys want to make. I work with a lot of people in the community here in El Centro. I'm here since 2000. I grew up in Redondo Beach, California. Big difference. But even so, since I came here to the valley, I was always focusing on helping people. And right now, one of the things I know is there's a lot of people suffering right now. There's a lot of people who lost their houses. There's a lot of people who live 3 or 4 different families in a house because they cannot afford to make payments or the bills. You guys need to understand those people. Imperial Valley is one of the highest rate unemployed. And there's a lot of people there, especially Latinos. We call Latinos, but this area most people are Mexicans. A lot of these people don't even speak English. They can't even read what you guys say. Somebody here in the audience was mentioning that she didn't know anything about what was going on. I was one of those. I do a lot of travel, but when I came back, one of my neighbors told me, you know, it's going to be an audience. Would you like to represent us? And please, have these people understand we cannot afford having to raise our bills and water at this time. We need you guys' help. We need the community, Imperial Valley, especially you guys that represent the people here, understand that we cannot continue doing this. We know the economy is bad. We know we need to make a changes in our budgets. We understand, but you guys have to understand also the people who are suffering here in the valley, Imperial Valley, especially in the center. Thank you.
Thank you. That was our last speaker. I see no additional slips. I had called out several names. Yes, sir?
I'd just like to add.
Well, then you need to come to the microphone. But you only have 60 seconds, 1 minute.
That's all I need. I forgot to say something. I get nervous when I'm up there.
Well, come back and give us a 60-second presentation. You need to restate your name first.
Robert Ramirez.
Okay.
I'd just like to say in no way, shape, or form that 800 opposals.
The letters, you mean?
The letters.
Okay.
The small amount of people that we have here, I could guarantee if you give us more time, if you give me more time, we'll have everybody sign the opposal. No one wants this. Nobody wants this.
Okay.
So that small amount and this small amount of people does not represent the majority of people in El Centro. It does not. We disagree with it.
You disagree with the numbers?
With the rate increase.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
There were, as you will recall, ladies and gentlemen, there were several names I called out. We saw no one come forward. I don't know if they signed a slip, and then the previous speakers had registered their concerns, and they may have decided to, they may have had other commitments and had to leave the room. So I see no one coming forward. I have no additional slips. So that concludes the portion. Now I would ask staff to come back. Mr. Hagan, if you will. There were several comments and questions asked of members of the public. I think you may have captured that in your notes. If you did not, I will try to remind you of what some of them were.
Excuse me, Mayor, we have a point of order.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Close the public hearing? You need to close the public hearing.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's why we have such a dutiful city attorney. This public hearing is now closed. The public hearing, ladies and gentlemen, is now closed. Mr. Hagan, you're able to respond to some of the questions.
Okay, I will address some of the comments on the projects, and then...
Well, the one had to deal with capacity. Are we seeing the same amount of capacity? And then you can go forward.
Okay, the wastewater
All right, Holly, you can't hear me.
No, I can hear you. It's the gentleman I cannot hear.
Okay, okay.
Okay, the wastewater
Terry,
plant.
turn the microphone toward you so it lines up 90 degrees. There you go.
Okay, the wastewater plant is 8 million gallons per day, and the current flow is approximately it varies between 4 and 5.
The wastewater capacity is 8
MGD, and the current
8 million gallons.
Yes, per day.
Okay.
And the current flow is between 4 and 5 MGD.
Okay. Did you hear that, ladies and gentlemen? Our capacity is 8 million gallons. Our current flow is between 4 and 5 million per day. That's in the wastewater, which is located off of La Brucherie. Okay, Mr. Hagan.
And then the water plant located at 8th and Dannenberg is, the new plant is 21 MGD.
Okay.
And our peak flow during summer time it approaches 15, 16 MGD.
Okay. Mr. Hagan, I think that acronym is
Million gallons per day.
Million gallons per day.
Yes.
In our water plant. And at peak flow, we have, what's the amount for the peak flow?
Summertime, it hits around 15, 16.
Okay. Summertime is 15 to 16. Okay.
Of course, you need additional capacity for fire flow if there is a fire.
Okay. All right.
Well, we need additional capacity if adjacent cities or
are in need.
municipalities or county areas go out of water. Didn't we have that happen with Heber, where we were providing service there?
Right. We do have a proposed project to interconnect Imperial and Heber Water District. Should there be an emergency, we would share water with them.
Okay. Are there any questions? Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Hagan. Does that, is there some additional information you can share based upon some of the comments made by members of the audience?
There were comments about the wastewater projects, and those are, I believe most of those, or if not all, are bonded projects. So these are bonds we already have. And except for the Southern Pump Station, which Mr. Waddell, after we sat down and explained with him, another engineer, he agreed with that project. That is a new project, but it also eliminates 3 out-of-date lift stations. We'd eliminate those, and this would be a new lift station. The other projects are basically maintenance.
Okay.
Then there were comments about the automatic meter reading. We have 300 of those in the city already. We've installed them. We've had them for a couple years. They work fine. Basically, we have the touch read system now. The water meter readers walk around from house to house, and basically they don't open the meter box. They simply get near it, and it automatically reads. So, but this is a system here that our water meters, and most of the water meters throughout the city, we have approximately 10,000. Most of those are fairly old and out of date, and as they start to fail, they read low. So as they wear out, the lower flows aren't registered. So we're actually pumping out more water than we're reading.
Is this so? This is a maintenance for replacement. This is not a new and
It is both. It would go from the touch read system to an automatic read system into the office.
So is this
the finance office.
What I'm trying to get at, Mr. Hagan, is would this meters be an expansion to encompass more of the users? Or are you saying this is a replacement in the form of maintenance?
It's a maintenance
Okay.
replacement. The other thing that would provide, I live here in the city. The only time, the time I've had, my house is less than 10 years old, but I've had leaks. I've had a landscape leak, and before I realized that, it took basically almost 2 bills before I saw that, and it doubled the bill. Just having the leak, the automatic reading system, we would, in the office, the finance office and public works office, we'd be able to notify people immediately if there is a leak. We'd pick that up. There's software that would automatically give that to us so we could help people out. But just that would save the typical
consumer?
person what the cost is. I think most people here, if they've lived in their home for a while, have experienced a leak, and I get calls regularly about people complaining that the fact that, well, it's gone on for 2 months, and the next bill's going to have that leak as well. Why couldn't we pick that up sooner? Well, with this system, we will. I heard an individual complain about going in and paying their bill, and then still the meter reader shut the water off. This system would allow us to turn the meters on and off at the office the minute they pay the bill.
Mr. Hagan, there was an additional comment with regard to maybe the consumption of water and whether or not this was essentially backfilling maybe a revenue shortfall because of lower water usage. Can you comment on that?
Yes, since 2006, we have seen the per capita or per residence water consumption reduce slightly. So there has been conservation being taken place by individuals.
But how does that impact any of the maintenance or operational issues that we would otherwise be faced with? I'm not sure
It really doesn't. I mean, we still have the same expenses for the system, operating the system. There's been a small percentage reduction, but it would only reduce the cost that we pay for water, the raw water.
And quite frankly, I think what we'd all like to see is alternatives to the big green lawns that we have in our front yard. There was one recommendation with regard to, I think maybe Ms. Von Flew, providing greater educational opportunities for our citizens on effective ways to reduce water consumption as a way of saving money. So I like that idea. But I didn't understand if there was a connection between consumption of water and what we're addressing here with the rate increases.
Not significantly.
Yes, Mr. Silva?
Terry, getting back to the capital projects and the pump station, Mr. Waddell mentioned in his comments that we had reevaluated the cost of that, and
That's
circumstances lowered the estimated cost of that significantly.
Yes, we've got, with that $20 million of bond money left, we have a list of maintenance projects, and if any of these projects are reduced in cost, there's other projects on the priority list that would just simply move up and we do more maintenance. Right now we're in a mode of deferred maintenance, and we need to do these projects to reduce events like sinkholes, that type of thing, and failures.
So the response to Mr. Waddell then would be that even though the cost estimate of that project has been reduced, the proposal is to still maintain the same funding availability, and we will be able to do other things.
Right, we'd be
Correct.
able to do additional maintenance work.
Okay. Some people talked about why go 5 years in the future and kind of tie people into that rate increase over 5 years, and why not go 2 years and then reevaluate that in 2 years? Perhaps the economy has recovered, perhaps people hopefully would be doing better, and therefore we would be able to adjust that accordingly. What's your response to that?
Well, there's the cost of doing the rate study. staff time, as well as the consultant's cost, the cost of the mailers, the Prop 218 process, everybody's time here. We're able to really look at the 5-year window and predict that fairly well, because we know what the capital projects are. They're all planned out for the next 5 years.
And another comment that was made is we're planning to do some things, and there's not a lot of growth, there's not a lot of building, there's not a lot of activity going on in that area. Why do we need that? What do we need to plan for those projects?
I think, if I could piggyback on that, I believe it was Mr. Kuiper who said that he felt that maybe some of the predictions were based on housing expansion, housing development projects that are not going forward. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, let's take the water projects. The Alder water line is going to be used. We're going to use capacity fees, so it's not out of the rate increase. The meter replacement for the automatic meter reading is included, but it's replacement of old meters within the city. Let's see. And we've got the 2 large water storage tanks at 8th and Dannenberg that they have not been maintained other than cleaning inside, but they haven't gone through and been repainted and checked for the metal thickness of the wall thickness and done since they were built. So those, I believe, are on the range of 20-25 years old. So, I mean, these type of things, there could be a lot of damage due to corrosion, and we may not know that.
Another comment that was made by one of the speakers related to what have we done as a city to make sure that we are practicing or identifying all the efficiencies that we can within what we have and not pass unnecessary costs to our residents. Can you address that?
Well, in this rate study, we went through over 6 iterations trying to defer maintenance and move projects out further and reduce the cost. I mean, obviously you could go do this further, but then the cost of deferred maintenance there's a point where you get a failure and it will end up costing more. I mean, just the one sinkhole was $1.4 million, and to have gone in and lined that project, that area of that sewer line would have been a fraction of the cost.
Mr. Hagan, wouldn't you agree that one of the efficiencies is taking a much more proactive approach to identifying potential system error or system failures? I mean, it seems to me that one of the things that your department has done is gone through to identify where there may be failures, either through the videotaping or some kind of testing of lines or something like that. So at least in my view, over the last, say, 4 to 6 years, the Public Works Department has been much more proactive trying to identify problems before the failure occurs, because as you say, a little bit of maintenance at the right time is a lot less expensive than an absolute failure that creates a huge problem.
That's right. If you remember, you woke up in the middle of the night because the Vector truck, a contract Vector truck company, was in cleaning the lines and then doing the video work right afterwards. And as you know, we did 4th Street south of Main. We rehabbed all the manholes, set them up at a lower height so that you don't get the bumpiness, and we worked on that sewer line as well.
If I may, working with Mr. Hagan as city manager.
Ruben, you need to pull that down and speak.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm trying to look at there. Because I'm trying to look at the council while speaking of this. Probably the big issue that came when Mr. Hagan joined us was, and actually we started the project before you started, was replacement of the water plant. The water plant was over 55 years old. There are no replacement parts for it. In fact, we have a section, which is the pump station, that is still at 55 years old. and that's when that rate study was done originally, so that the underlying support for the bonds are the water rates. When we built the water plant, if you'll recall, we actually went through an additional engineering cycle that we looked at the power costs, and the IID joined with us with that additional review of an additional engineering firm along with the IID, and we were able to get much more efficient pumps brought in. There was a higher cost to it, but that has kept our costs under control. When we come down to water, it's personnel, that's about 32%, and the balance of that is power and water. There's less than 2% on everything else. So those are the big numbers. But I think it's important for folks to look at their water usage. I think you heard an important number tonight. Our high rate of consumption is 16 million gallons. And by the way, prior to the water plant that was built, we had a permit for 13 million gallons. And the city has not grown much. We were way past our permit, and with the work of Mr. Hagan and a few on the staff, we were able to get a temporary permit to 16 because we were designing this. So we're at proper capacity. But I think it's what you heard was we're at 16 million gallons, and an average flow is 4 to 5. Let's take that 5. That means it gives you an idea of what is not going through the house but is going on to the landscaping. A tremendous amount of water in this community goes on to landscaping. So if most folks can just look at those two numbers and realize if they're a typical user, allows landscaping. We have brochures, we've had booths set up about the Xeriscape program. We encourage folks to keep grass to where your kids play and where you need that, but where you don't have that foot traffic, go to something else that has a lower water use. I know people say, well, you'll have less sales. The commercial side is taking up plenty of water, and they're paying their bill, and that's where those automated meters are at, on our commercial industrials. But folks have the ability to control their consumption by looking at that. So if they really think about it, about almost 2/3 of the water that goes in their house winds up on the lawn or somewhere else. So there's an opportunity on that. And that's not, some folks' homes are different, apartments are obviously going to be different, but that's just one aspect of that, and I think that may help in this process. But I will say is the biggest thing is we have our debt service to pay for that water plant, because without that water plant, we don't have anyone in this valley. And the water plant that was there was beyond, there was no fixing it anymore, because the parts aren't available. And by the way, I want to take hats off to the water plant crew. They were literally fabricating parts. So they were building the filters by hand because no one makes them anymore. Our new plant is up to date. It's all automated, and I think you might have heard that situation of Heber where there was a turbidity issue and the water tank was contaminated. Our systems automatically shut themselves off and sends out a notice to the crew to come out, but it reverts the water back into the raw water pond, which means our water system is very automated and very safe, and you don't get into those boil water situations. But I'll turn this back to Mr. Hagan. I just wanted to help you out the water plant.
Are there any additional questions for Mr. Hagan?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Hagan, I think you responded to the majority of the questions that were asked by members of the audience. Ms. Salcido, there were several questions also posed or concerns relating to the financial aspects of this project. Would you mind putting the slide up, if you can, again, that relates to the fees, if adjusted, and the various levels, and what that would mean at the out year? We're losing some members of our audience, but I think those that are remaining are quite interested in this.
Which slide?
Well, I'm not quite. It's the one that reflected, I think it was a double slide. One was wastewater, a smaller one underneath was, yes, what it would do. There, I think so. The estimated reserves in 5 years at the 4, the 3, the 2, and the 1. And then you had another slide that reflected what would occur, this one, at various rate scenarios. Okay. Any additional questions from any council members based upon the slides that Ms. Salcido has placed up for us to review and from any?
No, but I do have a financial related question.
Ms. Salcido? I mean, Mr. Silva?
Letty, I think within the comments that were made, one of the speakers basically said that we're doing this for our own benefit, and I presume he meant the city's benefit, which I agree that we are. But can you go over the regulations and the auditing process that ensures that these funds do not get spent for other not related purposes?
Yes. Basically, the water and wastewater fund, or enterprise funds, they should be run like a business. Self-sustained, that the revenue should be coming in to support the activities, the expenditures for that specific fund. Well, the revenues from the water fund cannot be used for the wastewater. The revenues from the wastewater cannot be used to support activities in any other fund, water or another.
And is that audited by?
Yes. On an annual basis, we close our books as of June 30, and actually before then, we start with our audit process. They come out here 3 times a year. They review every single documentation on a test basis. All our funds are reviewed. We produce financial statements that are on an annual basis, that are in conformity with accounting principles, that they're in conformance. There's no major exceptions. The auditors come in, make sure that we're using our funds the way we're supposed to, that our expenditures have been validated, have been approved as per our own policies. They form an opinion at the end of the audit, and our audits have been unqualified, meaning that there is no exceptions. We're using the funds the way we're supposed to for that specific fund, whether it be the general fund, the water, the wastewater fund. In addition to that, those financial statements are submitted to another agency, and those are reviewed again to determine, to make sure that we are reporting based on the appropriate standards, the standards applicable to those financial statements. On an annual basis, we have our budgets, we have our discussions with the various departments, with council, with city manager, to determine what the needs are going to be for those departments. And those departments, we go through the various expenditures. We try to cut back because we have known for some time that there has been problems within these funds. So we try to maintain those expenditures, and it's a long, lengthy process. We start in January. The budget is normally adopted in June. So both of those processes, very lengthy, very detailed, in order to be able to produce, in order the budget to be able to stay within budget, to be able to maintain expenditures, to determine what our position is for the next fiscal year. With regards to the financial statements, to make sure that everything we did during the year is in conformity with our own policies, the state policies, and everything is done correctly.
Thank you, Liz.
Yes. Any additional questions? No? I would like to restate for those members of the audience that's still present how much we appreciate your involvement in this process. While I heard a lot of opposition to the rate increase as proposed, I heard and we got letters that was quite significant as far as the numbers to the rate increase as proposed. What I didn't hear, or unless I was turned a deaf ear, and I hope I did not, I was trying to be extremely sensitive to all of the concerns. What I didn't hear was individuals saying that they didn't believe there might be a need. And when we talk about a need, this need is, yes, for the city, but the city does this for the residents. This is an issue that I truly believe is a quality of life issue, our water and our wastewater. I recognize our high unemployment. We recognize that there are members that are on fixed incomes. We also recognize as a council that there are those who are unemployed and underemployed. So as we sit here, all the comments coming forth did not fall on deaf ears at all. And we're in between a rock and a hard place. I'm sure that if we could duck under this diocese, we would be happy to do that, but that's not why we were elected. We were elected to make hard decisions. And some of those decisions may be ones that individuals do not agree with. Part of that is showing leadership. As we make this decision, however, we do not make it in a vacuum. We make the decisions based upon all of the input that we've received tonight, trying to provide that balance with the needs of a growing community, the way that the bond was structured to make sure we can service the debt, and at the same time provide that level of service that's needed for the residents here. I know it may appear to some that we've shown an insensitivity to your concerns. It may even appear that we are callous to the fact that this is a high unemployment area. But I want to assure you the council is very sensitive to that. And we really recognize that all of our decisions are made, and they're made in a political environment, but they're undergirded with compassion. It's a political environment, but our decisions of this nature are undergirded with compassion, because we recognize our members of this community. So with that, I don't know if there's any additional, oh, I'm sorry.
I have comments.
Ms. Walker have comments, but Mr. Silva, I think, may have a question or comment.
No, it's a comment, but
Okay.
I'll defer to
okay.
Ms. Walker. Well,
go ahead, Mr.
thank you, Madam Mayor, because I did want to make some comments. I am taking a position on the proposed rates, which I'll talk about in a minute, because I do think that we need to evaluate both of the proposals differently. I do think that as I look at the numbers for wastewater and the kinds of reserves and the kinds of capital improvements that need to take place, that we are operating in a very dangerously zone that needs to be addressed. So I'll talk about that in a minute. I do think, however, that as it relates to the water proposal, that although it's not very healthy, it is much healthier than the wastewater. So personally, I think that there's room for discussion as it relates to the water rate increases that are being proposed. But I wanted to talk about some of the general comments that were made by the speakers in terms of what our role here is. And the easiest thing for all of us to say would be to say, don't do it. Don't raise rates. Are we doing a service to our community? Are we making the tough decisions that need to be made for the benefit of our community? Are we looking into the future of our community? I don't think that we are. If we take the easy way out and just say, no, the pressure is too high. I don't want to be told that I'm this and I'm that, and that I'm insensitive to our community, and I don't understand that we have a high unemployment rate. Believe me, I do. I live with those kinds of statistics every day, and I understand the economic conditions that we have as a county. So I'm not in any way insensitive to that. I take offense when some people come to the podium and they take personal attacks on the council. This is not for our own personal benefit. This is for the benefit of the community. Now, whether you agree with that or not, that's a different story, but everything that we do here, we do it with the intention of benefiting the community, and hopefully we make the right choices more so than not. These are difficult times, as I said. I take no pleasure in passing along a rate increase to our residents, but we have to look at reality. We have to look at where we are and where we're going to be. Some people made some observations over reserves and the fact that they're not necessary. If I agree with that concept, yeah, they may not be necessary, but they're prudent. We have to have reserve. We have to have the ability to meet unexpected circumstances, unexpected emergencies over time. I don't want to put ourselves and the residents in a situation where 3 years from now, instead of gradually facing this over time, that now we're facing a crisis and we're facing a 25% increase as we did some years back. I take exception to some of the comments that were made in terms that the city is ugly. Of course, we don't have the most beautiful city in the state or in the country, but you know what? The city of El Centro is a fine place to live. Could Buckland Park be in better shape? Of course, all of us know this. But all of us also recognize how much money it will take to make Buckland Park a top quality park. And you know what? And we don't have the money to do it. We just accept that. That's reality. We try to do the best that we can within the limitations that we have. And I take exception to people criticizing the city, criticizing us at a personal level, because that's not what we're here for. But that's the hat that we wear when we choose to run for these kinds of positions. So I just needed to get that off my chest. Again, as it relates to the actual rates, I do have some comments, and I hope that we separate water from wastewater.
They're separated, but Ms. Walker may have some comments first, and then we'll get back to the discussion as it relates to the rate and the adjustment and any modification the rate and the adjustment and any modification this council may wish to undertake. Ms. Walker.
Thank you. I don't want to reiterate, but I certainly agree with everything Mr. Silva said, and that is this council is very well aware of the circumstances of our community, and I think that we live in a very, very difficult time. We all recognize that. But I also think that this is among the most empathetic and compassionate group of people I've ever had the pleasure to work with. And these are tough decisions. These are tough times. One of the things I heard Mr. Silva say is that the reserve is prudent, maybe not necessarily mandated, but I think I'd like the city attorney to weigh in, because I do in fact believe that our bond covenants require us to have a reserve. It's not a luxury. It's not something that we can walk away from. We are mandated to have that reserve.
That is correct.
Becker, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
What is the percentage? What is it? What's the mandate?
The percentage of the reserves?
It's a ratio, I believe, based on the outstanding balance of the bonds.
As you heard earlier, is this Ms. Van Vloed? Yes. Okay. As you heard earlier, the finance director was saying we have to have a 1.15. That's the ratio, 1.15. And if we did something less, she had a declining scale to show what that would mean. Would you like to have that slide put back up again for your review?
Couple of other observations.
Okay.
One is that I believe Mr. Hagan showed a slide that showed that the city of El Centro's rates were within the ballpark, and in many cases less than the average of similarly situated cities throughout the valley. The one thing that really surprised me this evening is I did not hear a single speaker talk about what would be the impact on future generations. What would be the impact on our children and on our grandchildren if we just continued to kick the can down the road and not pay for these improvements at the point in time when they need to be made? That to me is a very, very powerful argument. Why would we not want to spread modest increases over a series of years as opposed to kicking the can down the road and a future generation, maybe that new batch of young people that are in their first home? And guess what? City of El Centro comes in and you get a 19% increase in your water and wastewater rates. Why? Well, because we didn't increase rates gradually on a pay-as-you-go system. There are so many things broken in this country because government has not taken the strong position of paying as we go. If you want to see something that's truly broken in California, spend a couple of minutes talking about pension reform. You want to talk to the school districts about not having enough classroom space. It's because we've not adequately planned. We as taxpayers have not been asked to come up with the money on a pay-as-you-go basis. That's what I think is incumbent upon the city of El Centro. We've listened to the rate studies. These are done by experts that do this for a living. We've listened to staff come forward with their recommendations that the best practice is going to be pay a little bit year after year after year with a planned approach, with the list of projects, and move forward in maintaining, operating our infrastructure so that, you know what, at the end of the day, we can say that we are a community that can welcome new development because we have the infrastructure to support new industry coming to this valley. That was another point that I did not hear any of the speakers make, and that is if we continue down this path where we kick the can down the road and we no longer have this capacity, this little bit of cushion of capacity in either water or wastewater, what company in their right mind is going to look to locate in the city of El Centro when the basic infrastructure needs are not there to support their business? So if we want to talk about economic development, we want to talk about getting people back to work, we better be looking at what we're doing with our infrastructure. And this, to me, just makes good sense from an economic development standpoint as well. I agree with Mr. Silva. I think we need to look at the two rate increases separately, and I thank you for that opportunity.
Mr. Solomon.
You know, one of the things that I have learned by being on the city council is that each of the council members want to leave this city looking better than when we got it. In other words, we all want to make some improvements. We all want to do the kinds of things that, in the end, the bottom line is they went in and they did a great job. Give you some examples. 80% of the streets in El Centro have been paved. People were complaining about not having a fire station on the other side of the railroad tracks. Well, we now have a fire station over there. We have what I call a mini outpatient clinic on the corner of Main and 4th. And one of the things that we're doing is that we're here listening to you because the way it works is working together, we can get a lot more accomplished and do it in less time and less money if we put our minds together. The father that was here earlier mentioned about 10 years. How would that figure out? Spread it out a little bit further. I don't know. But the fact that someone brought that up makes me wonder. I'm sure that our staff has taken a look at it, and I'm sure that they can give me an answer for it real quick. But it is something that I would like to just take a look at. One of the things that we're also trying to do is keep people working. And we do that by allowing projects to keep going. We're not in bad shape as some of the other cities, and that's because we've always been out front. We've always, as Cheryl just said, did not kick the can down the road. We said the buck stops here, and we actually went out and done something about it. And that's what we're doing right now. The buck stops here. And Mr. Silva did say it right. We need to take a look at separating how we're going to get the funding. But in the meantime, as long as we keep resident support, residents' input, this is going to be a fairly easy ride, knowing that we're both in this together instead of not fighting one another. Thanks.
Okay. All right. To staff, If I'm not mistaken, these were coming into us anyway as two separate proposals. Or was it not? Can we separate them out, bifurcate, and look at the water rate, and then subsequent look at the wastewater rate, and then, or either approve the rate study? Okay, you wanted to talk about
Well,
that.
Madam
I
Mayor,
think-
if you don't mind, if we can start with the wastewater from
We'll
from
start
my
with the
perspective.
wastewater, all
I
right.
think that if you look at the table that was provided to us, in terms of
Does she
the...
have a slide there?
Yes, Letty,
Okay.
can you show it? It's the one that
Put the
shows
slide up, and that'll benefit the
working
members of the
capital.
audience.
The one that shows the reserve amount.
Did anyone need any break for personal privileges? Okay, yes, yes.
No, it's the
No?
one that gives you the working capital. No, keep going.
With all the zeros.
Right.
Right there.
The one that shows zero budget for,
We're not sure where it is, Leticia. There you are.
that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The 2012, okay.
That, to me, that slide is the most telling slide of all, in that it shows that we have absolutely no funding availability for major equipment replacement, for infrastructure replacement. In these circumstances, if we were to have a major catastrophe, major emergency, major event happening that impacts our wastewater capabilities, we are going to be in deep trouble. Now, when I met with staff to discuss this for my own personal value and benefit and information, I did ask, so in the past, how have we funded those kinds of emergencies? And Letty, you want to share with Council what you said in terms of other funding sources that we relied upon in the past to fund some of those unexpected circumstances that are no longer available to us?
Well, some of them are basically fluctuation in revenues. For example, back in 2006, our interest revenues were at 5-6%. Now those revenues are down to less than 1% at 0.30%. So back then, we had a higher level of earnings. We were able to cover some of these expenditures. We don't have those revenue streams anymore, not at those levels that we had back then.
Right.
Mr. Salcedo, also, you mentioned at the same meeting, you performed a refinancing of the sewer bonds that generated funds that 1 year to help cover the costs of a big expense.
In 2006, we issued wastewater and water bonds, which the funds of which, the 32 million for each, we invested it. We went out to bid and we received a very good rate, and those monies were paid to us in 2009. It was a very substantial amount. That amount helped us pay some of those capital projects.
Thank you. And those, we don't expect that, those are not recurring revenues.
No, absolutely not. Like I mentioned before, that was interest revenue on our investments on our 32 million. First of all, we've already used up our 32 million in the water fund, and the rates are not at the levels that they were back in 2006, 2007.
So again, from my perspective, given the numbers that we have here, that is close to a crisis that we'll be facing if we don't do something about it. So from that perspective, I'd like to recommend to the council that we adopt the wastewater increase of 5.8 as has been proposed by staff.
There is...
The approval of the resolution C on your agenda.
I didn't hear a second.
Second.
Okay. Been moved by Silva, second by Walker, to adopt the wastewater rate as proposed by staff of 5.8%. Ballot, please.
Motion carries 4 with 1 absent.
Okay. You want to...
Okay, as it relates to the water, I don't see it.
Put the slide up.
I don't see this as a crisis. I think it's a concern that we need to be ready for circumstances. But as you can see, given our current revenue, we do have funding to at least have some designations for the equipment replacements, have some designation for infrastructure replacement. I think that there's capital improvement projects that are necessary and will need additional revenue, but I'm not so sure that we need to go to the 4.4% increase that is being proposed. Now, I asked staff, what are the consequences if we don't approve a 4.4 and we go something lower? That just means less revenue, so some of the capital projects that are listed will not take place, and we'll have to prioritize. I think that we can accommodate a lower rate in water, and I'd like the council to consider a water increase of 3.4% instead of the 4.4 that is being recommended by staff.
Okay. It's been moved. Any questions to that? It's been moved by Mr. Silva, second by Ms. Walker, for a water rate adjustment to 3.4%.
That's by resolution.
Ballot, please. Is that something you didn't understand? I see a quiz looked on your face.
Oh, sorry.
Let me finish with this motion, please. First, ballot, please. We have a motion and a second. We're going to ballot. Okay. Now, did you have a...
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What is this rate? I mean, you're saying 3.4% per year?
Correct.
And in other words, the amount would stay the same each year?
No, it increases.
Just like the wastewater
No.
is going to be 5.8% each year
Yes,
for the next 5 years?
Correct.
Isn't that almost 6%?
that is my motion, yes.
Okay. And then the water
Water
rate would be
is 3.4 versus...
On an annual basis.
on an annual basis every year. So you're looking at actually almost what? Almost 10%, and it's compounded.
Correct.
Is that clear to everyone? The action that the council took? And the rationale behind the council's decision to make an adjustment and separate out water from wastewater based upon the slides and the contingencies and the undesignated and the reserves? I think so. Ms. Van Floo?
Could I have her put up the slide that shows the difference percentages on this particular proposal?
On this one, it's...
Remember, didn't she have one up that said we could do a 4.4 or a 3.4 or whatever? I'd like her to put that slide back up since you were suggesting 3.4.
That's the motion, and that motion has carried. That motion did carry. Okay. But I just want you to know it's not a suggestion, it's a motion that's carried. Okay. Ms. Salcido. Well, I'm sorry, not now, sir. We have a question on the floor, and we're having our finance director try... But we're trying to have a response to the previous question, and then... But our public hearing has been closed. I'm being very, very generous for allowing this additional time and question, only because I think it's of value, and the public certainly is quite interested, those of you who have chose to remain with us. Is this the slide, Ms. Van Floo, you're referencing? So is there a particular... okay, from the 3.4, you see that column? So is that...
I just wanted to see from the 4.4 to 3.4 what it looked like in numbers.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Ms. Sanders, there's an item on the agenda we haven't taken action on yet. I'd like to move for acceptance of the water, wastewater, and storm water rate study, item 10A on the agenda.
Okay. It's been moved by Ms. Walker. May I have a second? Second by Mr. Solomon to accept the study. Ballot, please.
That motion carries 4 with 1 absent.
All right. Thank you. I believe we have completed this. We have just informational items remaining, 11 through 17. Is there any council or mayor, any reports, any council reports?
The only item I wanted to bring to your attention, Ms. Mayor, is I had the opportunity to attend the ICTC meeting and
Thank you.
LTA meeting on your behalf. There was a staff presentation that we may have requests from transit located in Yuma that want to become part of our downtown transfer terminal, and they were requesting that the city give first priority and consideration to those that are located within Imperial County.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Silva?
Madam Mayor, the council in our last meeting heard a public comment from a concerned citizen in regards to the daycare facility that is operated with the hospital, and the council asked me to come back and report to you on that. The same people went to the hospital board meeting, presented the same letter, voiced the same concerns that were raised with us, and I'll share with you that I think the concerned resident heard from the board as well as from the council that the hospital board is committed to make it work, to give them enough notices. They're going to look into the issue of the equipment, and if that can be facilitated. The timing, and if January is not enough time to open a new center somewhere, if it's not too far from that, so there's flexibility that Mr. Green was instructed to have and to work with those residents to make sure that children are not impacted. I want to thank Ms. Walker and Mr. Jackson for attending the Al Grito celebration last Saturday. It was, again, a complete success. I want to thank Christy and her staff that they just do a tremendous job.
Mrs. Becker was there.
Chris, yeah, thank you. Yeah, Chris was there. Again, it's just another, just a wonderful event that has become an annual event for us, and I hope that continues. You can see by the attendance that it was, something that the community truly wanted and participates in. So thank you for that. I know it's very early, but the same night, I was able to confirm with the council that the very successful concert that we have over at Southwest High School for Cinco de Mayo, that's been confirmed again for next year. And so we'll continue that relationship. Same group. We'll continue that relationship with the consulate, and we'll continue to bring cultural events to our city.
Thank you. Mr. Solomon, have anything to report?
Nothing more than when the air pollution control meeting wound up with 3 of us there. So,
but one left immediately.
Efrain was the first one to beat it out of there. He patted Mrs. Sanders on the shoulder and said, "I'll talk to you later." But it was a very interesting meeting. The only problem was for me, is that they were so in depth in what they were saying that Mrs. Sanders, in all of her years, was able to hold tight with them. And I thought that was really nice to know that there's someone that has been around long enough that really knows how to handle herself in those kind of situations. So I was glad to be there with her.
Thank you.
And I think the confusion was, I got an invite through my email to attend that meeting, and I used to be the city's representative on the Airport Pollution Board, and so I'm just a good soldier, so I saw a meeting on my calendar, I showed up. And I see Mr. Solomon there, and so I sit down, and then Mr. Sanders walks in, and you go, okay, I better leave, I don't want to violate the Brown Act, so I left immediately.
The confusion, to speak about the confusion was the normal scheduler was out on maternity leave, so she's having a baby, or she's had the baby, and the person that was replacing her just pulled from the old list, and so she had us all coming. And yeah, and so, but it was good to see all of you. And as you know, I emailed you the outcome of what that meeting was about, so I won't restate it here tonight. Did want to talk about the upcoming League of Cities Division meeting scheduled for the 11th, October 11th. I think Brawley is our host. And the mixer that will be held at the fire station on the 18th Fire Station number 3. It's a chamber mixer, and it'll be held at Fire Station number 3.
Same date as the Brawley Bypass ribbon cutting.
And the Brawley Bypass ribbon cutting will be in the morning. We're very excited about that Brawley Bypass. Excuse me, a long time in coming, but I think it's certainly warranted to everybody that can. There will be a bus going, so if you need a ride, then show up, and we'll be happy to take you there. If there's nothing more to come...
And unfortunately, I notified Mr. Duran that I will be out of town on the 18th, and I will not be able to attend either of those events.
Is there anything else to come?
I'm not sure whether or not you opened public comment.
I beg your pardon?
I don't know that you opened public comment on the agenda.
For?
Just regular public comment.
Did I open it up?
Did you ask him?
Yes, I did, and I didn't see anyone come forward. Thank you for, I'm thinking, it's been a long night, but I did ask for that. I saw no one come forward. I think we had the host of folks that were here for that previous item. So if there's nothing else to come before the council, we'll see you in 2 weeks.